Hi guys, this is QUASAR QUA-NOLOGY number 3, covering every chronological appearance of our favorite superhero, Quasar, Wendell Elvis Vaughn. At this point in his history, he was called Marvelman, but we know who they're talking about. So anyway, this is Mike L., your host from the Comic Book Syndicate, and I am joined by my pal...
Kev-N Morse.
That's right, or as he's better known on our show, Kev-N, right? Your
That's right,
name. So today, on our third episode, we are reviewing Captain America number 228, 229, and 230, okay? So this story actually picks up from the Incredible Hulk 212, and when it's done, it continues into another issue of the Hulk, which we'll be actually covering on our show because it features Quasar. So anyway, before we get started, let's talk about Bronze Age comics in general. Kevin, what is your opinion of comic books from this era?
Worst things ever. No. It's probably one of my favorite eras.
Okay.
Probably because grew up in this time period. I mean, I started in the 80s with the books, but I always went back, collected stuff from the 70s and early 80s. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was just kind of the golden age for me for books. I know it's not the golden age of comics.
Yeah, okay.
But for me, it was my period. So I think, you know, every time I see them or pick those books up, I always enjoy them and stuff.
Sure.
So
just a different style, right? Different style than it is today.
Totally, definitely is. You know, it still was back in the old paper and you know, the newsstands, and it was just a lot different than you're going to see today in terms of books, for sure.
Absolutely. So for starters, okay, so our first issue here, Captain America 228. This comic is written by Roger McKenzie, drawn by Sal Buscema, and inked by Mike Esposito and, I never heard of this guy, John Tartaglione? Tartaglione. That's my guess. Tartaglione.
We apologize, we butchered it.
For all you virtue signals out there, if I mispronounce it, it doesn't mean that I have white privilege. It doesn't mean that, I'm an oppressor. It just means that I can't pronounce the last name. I'm sorry. I'm sure that you might mispronounce my last name if you try to say it. Anyway, sorry, I'm just really angry because I mispronounced the name recently and someone flipped out on me on YouTube.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Maybe I'll cut that part out. Anyway, okay. Okay. So back to the fun. Okay, so here we are. So on the cover here we have Captain America captured by the Constrictor. Okay, so I'm not overly familiar with the Constrictor, but, you know, whatever, you learn something new every day. So basically, starting out here, we have a serpent lurks below. We have a great opening shot here by Sal Buscema here. Captain America looking out with kind of a standard Sal Buscema expression. He does tend to use the same expression a lot over and over again.
Yeah, it's obviously he's sad or there's something bothering him. The glooming kind of expression, but it works. Mm-hmm. I think it's an angle shot. It's pretty cool. So
yeah. Well, and here's the thing is, when I was growing up, Sal Buscema, I had mixed feelings about him. I kind of liked him, but I kind of thought he was kind of a generic Marvel artist. But then as I got older, I realized, oh, no. Like, when I was reading Spider-Man as a kid, I always looked forward to the McFarlane Amazing Spider-Mans, right?
I was the same. Yeah.
Right, but then looking back now, I think Sal Buscema was the better artist.
It's funny because the style... Unspectacular Spider-Man, which he did a lot of, was a little different. I mean, it's here, but this has got a little bit of a different look to it. And I don't know if it's the embellishers, the inkers, for those out there, or it's just he kind of changed it as he went along, or maybe I don't know. But if you look at the Hulk run he did and this run, it's a little bit different than some of that Spectacular Spider-Man.
Apparently he at one point I remember reading an interview where he said that he changed his style to emulate Bill Sienkiewicz. He actually said that. Yeah, he did.
There is a
which makes sense, right?
Yeah, okay.
And then I found out later on that the reason he was fired from New Mutants is because Ann Nocenti thought his art style was too old-fashioned. And so she replaced him with Bill Sienkiewicz. So it was almost like a reaction, like, oh, really? Well, this guy's replacing me? Well, I mean, I don't know if that's why he emulated him, but he did say that's why he changed his style. And I think it was for the better, because his later style is better. But even in these early days, his style wasn't as good as it was later on, but his storytelling was great. Like right here on page 3, unfortunately we're limited because this is an audio podcast, but you can follow along digitally. But notice here how, again, it's like Cap's head is here, Iron Man's head is here, and your eyes led through the page, right? So this prevents you from going off the page. It keeps you in the reverted S. Look at this here. Cap and Iron Man are standing over a balcony. Look at this line. It goes from the vision of the Scarlet Witch and leads directly into Hercules. Isn't that amazing?
Well, it is, and there's even a few things. Actually, I wanted to go back to the cover for a minute because, you know, this is part of the reason I like the Bronze Age, and I don't think the covers today are really exciting.
No.
This cover, I mean, if I was a kid or anyone, there's action on this, and obviously, right, people can't see it, but we take a look at it. I mean, it's got a great angle. I mean, what's going on? This guy's wrapped. He's got the coils wrapped around him. Mm-hmm. It's got action to it, but it's, you know, you want to find out more. So I think that's one of the things is I noticed that with looking at these covers, and we can talk a bit more on the other issues, that there's more excitement to these covers than a lot of stuff, and it's clear, and I can follow it.
And it makes you want to pick it up and read it, right? And find out what is going on.
And going back to what you were saying on the page, was it 3 there?
Page 3, yeah.
Even the little things that he does in terms of telling the story visually. So if the captions were taken out, you'd have an idea. Like, look at Iron Man, you can tell he has his hand on his shoulder, you know, consoling him. Oh, there's something wrong. They're talking. They're having a walk, and so there's definitely a lot of those, those visual cues that can help you lead you through the story.
And also in the dialogue, he's Cap's kind of down on himself. He's saying, he goes, oh, so Iron Man says, of course you should, Cap. Everyone needs time off, even superheroes, especially superheroes. And then Cap says, well, I'm not so sure I do. A little inactivity, and I'm all but climbing the walls. And then he starts comparing himself. He's like, look, even the Vision and Android has fashioned a life for himself. So, but we can see that he's, like, they're together. They're sort of embracing, and he's sort of looking on. Then over here, he's looking at what they're doing, right? Now, this may seem rudimentary, but then today, artists can technically draw well, but they don't understand storytelling. I think new artists, right?
Some do, some don't. There's a lot more that I feel don't, and I don't know if it's lost or it's not, looked at. The funny thing, though, I wanted to mention in this, as we're talking about the art and some of the story a little bit here, or unless you want to talk about that after the dialogue.
Yeah, we'll talk about the dialogue later, but go ahead if you.
It's just funny that. And I realized at the time, but everyone calls each other by their superhero name.
Yes.
And they're not out in now, there was a time where, and I think they don't know yet, Iron Man, until it was later on, I think during the Iron Wars, or the Armor Wars, excuse me, his identity wasn't, everyone thought he had someone working for him.
That's up until then, really.
I think there was a period, I'm trying to remember, it was like West Coast Avengers or something where they knew they had inclination it was him.
I knew it was much later. You're right. It was like much later than you'd think, put it that way, right?
And I remember recalling reading somewhere that was their, when they were here, it was no one really knew each other's identities initially. Mm-hmm. Of course, that's a little harder with Wasp and Ant-Man initially. And of course, everyone knew Cap was Steve Rogers. But it's just interesting, and everyone's hanging out in their costumes, but of course they're supposed to be doing their superhero business at the Avengers Mansion. It's just interesting.
Well, you know what's funny is I know that apparently it was Steve Englehart that introduced that idea in Justice League of having everyone call each other like Bruce and Clark. But no, you know what? I'd rather them call each other Superman or Batman. Because I think it's more iconic that way, right?
Well, I think also, too, is for people who are picking up this for the first time.
Right.
And I'm sure it's intentional, I would imagine, to keep in the superhero names because of that. Instead of, you don't need that realism.
Right.
They're superheroes. And you want people... Because if I was picking up for the first time, I might not know all the characters in this. So.
And you know what else is interesting is I think this also... Because I noticed this when I read Contest of Champions, that... did you know that in Contest of Champions, which was, 82, 83, by that point, the Thing had never met Wolverine. Wolverine had been around since 1973, and the Thing had never met him. He says to me in one panel, "Oh, you're that guy from the new X-Men, right?" Can you believe... If that was today, do you think a character that popular would be around for 9 years without meeting the Thing? That's absurd. And I think it just shows there was such novelty back then because it's like you said, Tony Stark had a secret identity for 20 years. And now... Yeah. I'm not saying that inherently in itself is a great idea, but I find it fascinating that it just seems like things, I'm not going to say they move slower, but it seems like now, like with all the movies, they're ready to blow up the status quo. Like in Iron Man 1, he gives away his identity in the last scene, which is fine. But now every superhero does that. They've obliterated the secret identity. In the Superman Man of Steel movie, No secret identity.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
No love triangle.
And this, unfortunately, it's just, again, it's not realistic. Well, how could they hide it for so long? I don't care. It's fantasy. They should have a secret identity. I think that's what makes them neat.
That's what makes them superheroes.
Yeah. So, but
And you know what else? I think this also, this particular gentleman right here, a controversial figure, Jim Shooter. I think this is also a testament to the benefit of having someone like Stan Lee or Jim Shooter overseeing everything. And at this point in Marvel's history, if someone wanted to use Doctor Doom, okay, they had to ask permission. Can I use Doctor Doom? And Jim Shooter or the writer of Fantastic Four would either say yes or say no. Now, at one point, I know that Jim Shooter did change that. And he said, actually, everyone's open for anyone. Right. But I think it's better when, like, if you're dealing with 30 to 50 titles, there's got to be someone that everything is filtered through, right? And this is just a small example, but it reminds me of Spider-Man One More Day, okay?
Yes.
His marriage is erased specifically because his identity was revealed. His secret identity is revealed because of that Aunt May gets shot. So then he makes a deal with the devil to get rid of his secret identity. The payoff is he has to get rid of the marriage. Who gives a shit if it's logical? That's the point. So Marvel erases or alters 20 to 30 years of continuity just for the sake of Peter Parker getting his secret identity back.
Yeah.
Then, less than a year goes by, Brian Michael Bendis is writing a new Avengers story, and they're sitting in the room and everyone's giving away their identity, and Peter Parker decides, I'm going to pull off my mask. And
yeah, I remember that.
Is there no one at Marvel that goes, we just did a story
to clean it up,
where we cleaned up 30 years of BS, and now you've all and again, it just tells me that there's since 2004, there's been no one at Marvel.
And there was a big mistake with that too, because after that, they did another thing with him retro the year with Doctor Strange altering some of it. What bothered me though was in House of M, Peter Parker asks him to change things or alter something. I can't remember what it was. Going back because he liked the way things, and he said, "I can't do that. I don't want to do that."
Sure.
But again, and the problem is that I think they had a lot harder line in terms of the character and what their characteristics were like, what their beliefs or values. They had some of that, the depth. So if you were going to use a character, you still had to put him in the context of how that character would handle that situation.
Sure.
Which made it interesting because you still had their uniqueness. I don't see that in a lot of this stuff. They forget about continuity. There's no connection.
Yeah.
And then the way the character acts in one issue is completely opposite of how we'd act in another comic.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
And because no one's keeping track of it and no one's enforcing it. That's the problem, I think. Now, you know what? We haven't even gotten to the main part of the story yet. We're on page 6. I love this scene, okay? Captain America is sort of, feeling down on himself. He's up on the roof of the Avengers Mansion, and then he sees some kids playing. One of them runs out into the street and is about to get hit by a car, but Captain America is there to save the day. He leaps through the air, jumps into a tree, swings around, jumps over a fence just to save this kid. Awesome scene showing just how awesome Captain America is. And then it's funny because then he says to him, "Now then, son, we're going to have a little talk about traffic safety." Yes, sir. And so one stern lecture later. I love it. This is great, right? Like, that's Captain America.
The visuals are great. And I think it's interesting that in a lot of them, they would do these small little plots or subplots.
Vignettes, you could say. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Very good word. Where you get to see what that character, what they're all about in terms of their abilities. So again, bringing back to potentially the new reader that, wow, this guy's athletic. This guy's, So I think that's clever.
Right, because you're a new reader and you're going, okay, so if you've never seen Captain America, you go, okay, so he's athletic, he's kind of, but you can see he doesn't have superpowers. He's just really strong.
And that shield's important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the shield, right. Yeah. So anyway, and so Captain America, it's funny because then he's speaking to this kid and something he says reminds him of something. So the kid says, "Gee, Cap, you're the greatest. You and the Falcon." Then Cap says, "The Falcon. Oh my God. Excuse me, boys. I have some pressing business." So then he says, the Papa says, "Blast, I've been so busy with my own problems, I've completely forgotten about Sam. I'll check in with S.H.I.E.L.D. and see if he's turned up yet." Then at the bottom it says, Falcon disappeared in Cap number 217. So it's 228. He's been gone for 9 issues, and he just completely forgot about it. I just think it's funny, you know?
It is, but as you said, with Marvel, time was always...
It was like probably 5 days later or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully maybe even a day. We don't know. Because there were adventures or they, you know... But you're right, that is kind of funny. It's like, whoa, that was a while ago.
That was a while, yeah. So anyway, so then so it's great because Cap goes to the underground secret headquarters, which we've seen in previous stories, that's actually underneath a barber shop. And then when he goes, so then he goes in, ends up fighting this robot, of course, right?
You always have to have a robot.
The classic Sal Buscema face there at the bottom of page 10. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. And then it's funny because then he goes into the bottom and there's a guy on a computer screen telling him that they're just about to blow up the base to destroy it as sort of evidence because they've been infiltrated by
horrible timing for Cap.
Yeah, I know, poor guy. So then we see this. This might be okay. So this is where our buddy Quasar makes his first appearance here on page 12.
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny because talking about the subject of this podcast, on the same page we have the Blue Streak and Texas Tornado. And let me say, maybe in another universe, they're doing a podcast on Texas Tornado because he's the one that got his own series in 1989 by Mark Renwald, right? Isn't that just amazing how things could have gone? But you know what I mean? At this point, Quasar was just as obscure as Texas Tornado.
That's true.
And you know what I mean? And it took Mark Renwald to take him and make an important hero out of him, right?
No, we never did get a Texas Tornado.
That's true, I know.
Series, and I'm upset.
You know what? If you're listening out there and you want to do your own podcast, I don't think anyone's done a Texas Tornado podcast, so there's your
try to find his appearances.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, then Cap ends up being confronted by the Constrictor. We get this nice full page splash page on page 14.
Yep. You could tell he's in distress. Mm-hmm. He's not enjoying it so much. Who would?
Yeah, exactly. Again, certainly between the two brothers, John Buscema is the better artist, but I still love Sal Buscema.
The shield's coming right out of the panel.
Yeah.
And it just, there's so much action in it, so many great little angles.
Page 15, yeah.
And I can follow exactly what's happening in each panel, where I don't have another flippin' splash page that's all dark and muddied and thousands of explosions and things around it, and I can't follow it.
It's funny because there's a really great website called Gentlemen of Leisure. It's the best X-Men review website that I've personally found. One of two. Paul O'Brien's is also really good. The X-Axis, which is now under House to Astonish, I think. But the Gentlemen of Leisure is a text review site, and one of the things about it is I'm now at the point in X-Men history where I'm reading reviews of comics that I never read. Okay, so this is like Age of Apocalypse era.
Oh,
X-Men.
Right. Okay.
I honestly, if you're out there and you're listening, please tell me why. I can't stand the artwork from that era, okay? This is like people like, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Joe Madureira, who I never liked, Roger Cruz. Sorry, guys. Some of them are good artists, like Andy Kubert and Adam Kubert are decent artists, but this is just in an era where everyone was drawing like the Image guys, so it's a complete mess. There's no
very similar. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Big close up of a guy's face, and then a woman posing with her ass facing the viewer, and it's not like this. Like this is the story comes first, right, and making it look cool comes second. So anyway,
yes,
I know that we probably sound like a bunch of grumpy old men, but
we are.
But if you can give what's the word I'm looking for? Not evidence, but if you can give concrete proof or evidence that we're incorrect, if you can show us pages from, like, we're talking about Captain America 1978. If you can find me a Captain America comic from 1995, 6, 7 that's as good as this, pre-Heroes Return, then feel free to send it, post it on the YouTube
it might
comments.
Be up there. I mean, obviously, it's what we see, but I can tell you I'm going to remember this over another page.
You got it. Okay, so overall, this story, Quasar is only in one panel, I believe. Okay.
Back of his head.
Yeah, but as far as this actual comic, I mean, it's one of 3 that we're reviewing today. So what's your impression overall of this comic?
So in terms of the art, which we've pretty much talked about, I really do enjoy all the artwork. There's, for most part of it, everything's there. Again, as I always say, to me, a good comic book artist is, if I don't have the words and the narration there, I can basically pick up what's going on based on the panels. And so and it really coincides nicely with what's written.
Sure.
So in terms of that, the art's it's great. The story, we talked about this before. Is it dated? No.
Okay.
I don't think it is. I mean, there are pieces of it. You can see some, back in the day, the large monitors, computer monitors, big, huge. You wouldn't, see those things. But I didn't find there was anything that made me feel like I was reading a comic from 1980. Or you could say, oh yes, the art or the book itself and the coloring. But yeah, come on. I mean, but in terms of the story and everything, it was still engaging. The one thing though will notice from that period is there was kind of, with comic books, they've progressed over the years where we have maybe 5 words and it's all pinups and art. And part of it is, I think, as the need to explain what was in each panel has evolved.
Sure.
Whether good or bad.
Sure.
So Golden Age, you had basically, they would write what was basically being done in each panel. Silver Age, and even in this age you see it too, is where they tell you, or they think it, basically what they're doing in the panel.
Okay.
So in this, what you do get is you get a little bit of that, but you have some nice narration. Is it always necessary? Maybe not. But I think it helps.
Yeah.
And because what those little pieces in there, and I find the writing is great, is the transitions from how the story flows. It explains things to me very well.
Yep.
And it allows me then to also catches me up on things, whether it's Cap thinking or it's the narration at the top, or something said. So, and they always have what I love in it, the refer back to issue. What happened to that?
Here's the thing. I'm gonna say this. I do appreciate them referring to old issues because I like to investigate and dig and treasure hunt, right, for those appearances. Yeah. I do find that they take me out of the story. So while I can accept them in these comics, that is one thing that I'm glad they got rid of now.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, like if they had like a little number and there was like an end note that you could see at the end.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea.
I mean, it fits in with the style of the comics of this day. But I wouldn't want to see it. Like, if I were reading Watchmen or something, I think it would take me out of the story.
And I did notice in each issue as we go on, they kept getting a lot of reference. There are quite a few, so I can see where it can get a little annoying.
Yeah.
But I decided it was interesting, helpful. Like, you're always feeling you could pick up this book and this story, and there's a story within a story, obviously.
Sure.
There's actually a few stories going on here. There's obviously Cap is upset about life and things going on in his life. There's a little story of him saving a child. There's him forgetting about Sam and dealing with that. And then there's this corporation here, this evil group that are going after him. And so there's all these little plots. And sometimes in the newer stuff, I find it's like, whoa, too much is overwhelming.
Right.
But the way this written, it's done well where you can read a story itself in this book, but you know it's going to continue on.
Right.
And it's a larger, obviously, piece something's been happening.
Right.
But I didn't need to read all those issues.
Right. That's the key. That's the key.
So that's my overall. Sorry, that's kind of long.
No. I agree. You can enjoy it on its own, right? Yeah. I also want to point out, we talked about narration a little bit. I love the fact, first of all, splash pages don't exist anymore. They got rid of them, which is idiotic. But there's nothing better than a good splash page. But I also love how these old comics started out with a little bit of narration. The New York City rains fall over Avengers Mansion like a shroud this afternoon, reflecting the somber mood of the man at the window. Now that's not quite Shakespeare, but
it's entertaining.
It's good. It's solid, and it pulls me in, and it just
adds
you a
mood.
The little extra ingredient to the story.
Yeah.
So anyway, a solid issue. Okay, now we're going to go on to the next one,
All
Captain
right.
America number 229. Yeah, exactly. Maybe there'll be more Quasar in this issue, right? Who knows? We'll see. So Captain America 229. Oh, look at that. Quasar
He's on the cover.
Makes the cover. Now, we have to point out, at this point, he was not called Quasar. He was called Marvelman, right?
That's right.
Not to be confused with Marvelman, a.k.a. Miracle Man. That's a different character. But anyway, at this point, there was Marvel Boy. Was there Marvel Woman? I don't think there was Marvel Woman. There's Marvel Girl in the X-Men. So it was a very common...
I liked using Marvel.
Yeah, name. Now, this cover here is drawn by Keith Pollard, who we've met a few times in Windsor and Detroit.
Love his
really nice guy.
It.
Great artist. He was doing sort of a Kirby-esque run on the FF in the late 80s. That's how I got to know him. He was an FF earlier than that as well. He did Spider-Man. He's a really good artist. So anyway, What's that?
Great cover.
Great cover, yep. So this one's called Traders About Me, or Traders All About Me. Now this issue...
Oh, look at that page.
It's excellent. It's still drawn by our pal, Sal Buscema, but it's inked by Don Perlin, who I first was introduced to on Transformers. But it turns out that he had runs on, I believe it was Ghost Rider and some other comics.
Yes.
And he was also on Bloodshot at Valiant Comics in the 90s.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I'm not kidding. His work on Bloodshot was excellent, okay? But look at the difference here. I can already say I think this art's much better than the last. Like, look,
it's got like that Marvel, that thicker Marvel style inking.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, there's a lot more mood to it, or atmosphere. Especially this page. The page we're referring to is there's an iron girder over, and he's holding, and he's got the body of Constrictor. But it's just got a great angle. You're right. The shading and the inking. The inking.
Yeah. Well, it's shading. Yeah.
Yeah. There's is really cool, and you know what I love that you just don't see obviously now with what's printed and how it is. You get to see all of those cross hatches and all the different styles that they used to use, so it's kind of neat.
It's great. Yeah, great splash page there.
Yeah.
So now Captain America, because he is, a superhero, he is rescuing the guy that just tried to kill him. Can you'd think he'd just snap his neck, but no, he's actually trying to
or leave him there.
Yeah, or leave him there to die.
Yeah.
He's actually trying to get him out of the danger because he's Captain America, which is awesome. So anyway, he brings the Constrictor to safety, ties him up to be arrested.
Come on,
later.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then basically he goes on his way because hey, he's still got to continue his mission. So then he goes back to his apartment, and I love when Marvel did this. And I first noticed this when I was reading an '80s Spider-Man run. Okay, and one of the stories was Spider-Man needed help, and so he was going. He's like, okay, well, I need help. I'm gonna go to the Baxter Building. So he's swinging along through the city. And finally he gets to the Baxter Building. He's like, oh no. And it cuts to this big full-page splash. He's like, I forgot the Baxter Building's gone because in a previous issue...
That's right. I remember that issue.
Yeah. And I remember thinking...
Well, what happened to it?
This is awesome that Marvel is like... And again, continuity itself is not inherently...
But they used to do it so well back then.
They did so well, exactly.
They were really tight with it.
So it's like here, Captain America goes back to his apartment, and he's like, I'd nearly forgotten about the damage done to the place when that Volkswagen came crashing in here. I gotta read that story.
Which was about 5 issues earlier.
I gotta read that story now,
So
right?
he's just coming back.
Volkswagen,
Or if he remembers, what the heck's a Volkswagen doing
here? I can't wait to find out how that happened. But anyway, so then he, of course, he's got to remember Bucky every issue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool. So then he goes back to Avengers Mansion and basically tells him that he needs some help. And so, of course, they're going to help him. I love... This is beautiful. Okay, tell them, what's the scene about here? We're on page 9. What happens here?
It's kind of comical relief, a little break. So Cap's asking, he needs money because he needs to go to, he has to travel to,
he needs to go...
San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco.
So but no one has they're trying to find him money. So so the page we're talking about is, he asks the Beast. So the Beast goes in and he has a piggy bank.
That's actually a King Kong piggy bank.
Yes, which is kind of funny. And he's trying to shake, and he smashes it. And all he has is,
$4.75.
Really? He's looking to change in a piggy bank.
Awesome. That's something that even Stan Lee was doing back in the early days of X-Men, right? Like the X-Men all trying to get their change together to take the bus. Like that's what brings these heroes down to earth, right? And it's a little bit of
down to earth, a little bit of realism, but it's also comical. It's really it's not cool. Like this superhero has got a piggy bank.
Right. It's not bad. It's not like Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark with their infinite wealth. It's like, oh shit. Like, I mean, we don't make any money being superheroes.
And would you see that today in it? But it's great. They don't have all this money. But at the same time, it's comical, but it gives you a minute to get the story going and a new pace to it.
Okay, so where are we here? Page 10.
Jarvis comes through again.
Yeah,
always the butler.
So it's fine. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with comic books having like an easy way out with the money, but it's just nice that we had that one scene with the Beast. That was great. Also showing how good of a friend he is to him, right?
He takes the bus.
Yep, exactly.
That's all he can afford.
Exactly, I love it. So then now here on page 12, we finally get to see Quasar in his original costume, slightly different design on his chest. Take note of that because his logo does change.
One thing I want to recall, though, is why would he take a bus? They have their jets and everything. They weren't allowed to use them if it wasn't part of like a government venture thing.
I didn't know that.
I believe that's what there's something he mentions about, you can't use it. which makes sense. I think there was something be said if I recall. That's because I remember there were, it's his own personal business he's taking care of.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Because you think, why wouldn't he take the Quinjet?
Right. Interesting. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So then page...
Yes, you were talking about seeing Marvelman, his face.
Yes, right at the bottom here. And then jumping over to page 13, I love this. That's Captain America. That's the damage done by Captain America here. We just
Bodies
see all
everywhere.
These guards. Yeah, just
knocked out,
draped
just
over.
knocked out.
Knocked out, draped over the fence here. It's great. So then basically now we have a confrontation with Blue Streak, who it turns out is the traitor, right, in the group.
I realize he's wearing kind of like a disco outfit.
Yeah,
because they changed him later on.
Yeah, he did.
When he did die,
he did have a different costume.
It was all
like
blue.
A supervillain costume.
Unfortunately, he was killed by.
Yeah, he was killed by Scourge, right? Yep.
Yeah, Scourge.
Of course. Yep. So anyway, Quasar, Vamp, and Texas Twister race to the rescue, and then we have a nice little fight scene. Oh,
great fight scene!
Yep.
And you see how great of a fighter Cap is, his experience over the years throughout these panels, and how he handles a whole team.
Yep. Takes on all three of them.
Yeah.
It's great.
Cool.
So at the bottom, it's so funny. At the bottom of page 15, Quasar says, "Now it's my turn, Cap. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but nothing, Mister. Where were you when the Falcon disappeared? Right here, Cap, practicing." And then it goes from there. So then they have a little fight. Of course, Captain America wins. Then he beats everybody else, and then basically we get to the end.
But if you step back one panel, so the one character that's in here that's really didn't know much about her, I couldn't remember her. Was it Vamp or
Vamp? Yeah.
Why is she so getting a little crazy there on Blue Streak, or on that? See, she's okay. A little foreshadowing. Yes, something's not right here. And she says things too. It's like, whoa, why are you so upset? Anyways, kind of find that interesting.
Pre-planning it. That's what happens when you get the story mapped out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically then we get to the end of the story, and Cap he gets what he wants. He finds out information on Falcon. We're holding him on Alcatraz, and he'll never leave that hellhole alive.
He's really beat up.
Yeah, he is.
He doesn't look good.
He's got his black eye. He's missing a tooth there.
Yeah, Vamp really was not nice.
No, it's great. So next issue, the search for the Falcon, the return of the Animus. And as if that isn't enough, enter the Hulk. Yes. Okay, so here we go. So that was 229. Oh. Now we're moving on to Captain America 230.
Okay, I just have to start with this issue.
Sure.
When I was doing my back run of Caps, and I didn't know all the issues. I don't think at the time I had my Marvel photo guide.
Okay.
Got that later. But when I flipped through and I went to issue 230 and I pulled up this issue, I went, holy cow.
Mother of Jesus. Yes.
Mother God, look at this cover.
Yep.
I mean, who wouldn't? Why? That's a green fist.
That's power.
Why is the Hulk punching Cap? Is it Hulk? And it's one of my favorite covers. I don't know why. Well, also,
I got to point out that he's punching the shield.
Yes.
And Cap, I mean, he's obviously okay, but look at all this debris from the wall behind him.
The force of the Hulk.
And, great.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Great.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's a great cover. It's definitely of the three, it's the best one, I would say.
Yes.
So then now,
splash page.
Same creative team as the last issue, Assault on Alcatraz. It's great. So now Captain America, in his secret identity of Steve Rogers, is on a boat on his way to Alcatraz. He's with he's with Quasar, and his identity is Wendell Elvis Vaughn.
And he's calling him Cap, even though he's Steve Rogers in this. But again, it's to keep let people know that's what Cap looks like.
Yep. And then something's going on here with Vamp, but we don't quite know what yet, right?
Not sure. She's saying a few things. Everyone has blonde hair. There's an obsession with everyone having blonde hair.
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
Because even the next page we go to,
another guy with blonde hair, riding in a truck with the Incredible Hulk.
Nothing against blonde hair.
But but it is funny at this point how we've talked about this before. Is how the Hulk. I mean, I was introduced to the Hulk from the TV show as the monster, right? This is not the Monster Hulk. This is not the Kirby Hulk. This is sort of a almost comic relief Hulk, you know?
It's a weird period. And I remember seeing some of the issues, and believe it or not, everyone who loves Rocket Raccoon forgets that no one wanted that issue with him in it because it's silly. I just remember that. But yeah, it was a silly era. So anyways.
It was a strange time, definitely. But I got to point out this issue, Hulk is driving along and he's riding with a guy with long blonde hair who's holding a cigarette. But he's holding the cigarette in an odd kind of unusual way. Then the Hulk says, "Bah, stupid lawman, we're not going to stop the Hulk. Hulk is tired. Stupid cigarette smoke makes Hulk sleepy." Then the guy says, "Whoa, wait, don't fight it, Hulk. Just relax." Actually, it's, "Hey, don't fight it, Hulk. Just relax for once, will you?" I mean, it's not like you have to. So clearly, this is not a normal cigarette.
I think there was something being mentioned, but it got past the Comics Code Authority.
Exactly, and I noticed a lot of that, and around this era, a lot of references to drug use that, I don't know, I guess it was more relaxed at this time than I realized.
And how many kids from reading this went on to smoke marijuana? I'm
sure this comic was a gateway comic.
It was,
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so basically, then the cops come and they, do they knock them out? Yeah, they must knock them out.
We don't know. We just see them get shot.
So as far as we know, they're dead.
And
they're
they just
dead.
put it. No more Hulk issues.
Exactly. Yeah. but again, leave it as a cliffhanger so we can find out what's going on. Right. Leave it as a question. So then our pals get into Alcatraz, and okay, this is one of my favorite scenes. Okay, so we're on page 7, and they get to the end of this hallway, and it says authorized personnel only. "I believe we found what we're looking for." Then Quasar says, "Well, in that case, I'll get us in. No armored door is stopping me." "No, wait, not kablam yet." He destroys the wall. Quasar says, "Okay, Cap, now I'll teach these corporation clowns what it means to mess with the super agents." Cap says, "You young idiot. If they didn't know we were here before, they do now." What do you think of that scene? It was kind of out of character, eh? What do you think?
It was a bit.
Harsh?
I think it kind of is, but it's him trying to show the old father figure Cap. But the thing I thought was funny even before this is he's dressed in basically his regular Cap or in the clothes. You can see he's wearing a suit. And Vamp, okay, she's wearing but if you look at the picture, you can see Quasar's weirdo boots.
Yep.
Right, but he's also got the headband on. But you know what? Back then,
that's a good
probably
point.
Be okay because hey,
the 70s.
Yeah, he's a head sweatband or whatever. And this part, you're right, is interesting as he says that. But now go to the next page where, okay, this is probably the one part in this story that you understand. Why did he even throw, after he yells at him, he throws his shield and then brings it back, but I don't know what he was trying to do.
Well, he says here, didn't shield teach you anything about stealth? So then it says, even as he speaks, Cap bolts forward, his right arm ripping his shield from his back, sending it flying across the inner chamber and back, zipping snugly into place. Yeah, what does he do?
I'm wondering, because it's the Marvel way, and I don't know, sometimes they have the narration or they have the general plot, I believe, right? And then the artist would do it, and then they usually put the text in after. I think there was a miscommunication in this
possible.
area.
Yep.
It looks kind of like, because I don't see the need of it, at least to show us how cool he is throwing his shield and then he comes back.
That's a good point.
Because I really didn't understand. I didn't know if he was trying to look for something like an alarm detector.
Echolocation with his shield.
He's doing, but I think there's something missing there. That was the only part of the story I went, what?
Yeah, what is going on here? That's a good point.
But it still looks cool.
I love how they added this elapsed time, 1.05 seconds.
I love
That's
that part.
Great.
Yeah.
I also noticed here, so we're on page 8, at the bottom of the page, notice Captain America is climbing out of the panel, eh?
Oh, it's great.
Another one, yeah, it's great. So anyway, so then, I love this. Now, keep in mind, this is Alcatraz. This is a real place. Did you guys know that at the bottom of Alcatraz, there is a secret headquarters?
Always.
For... is this the corporation? Yeah, for
Yes.
the corporation. And of course, there's this Kirby-esque sort of submarine.
It kind of sticks out as I thought it was kind of weird because you have kind of his style, and that's a Kirby. It's like they cut and paste a Kirby style
Totally.
bomb or whatever it is, or sub. I can't remember whatever it is, and it just looked kind of weird. And of course, I love the narration. They talk about these big computers. Mm-hmm. Now, if you are looking at it, the computers are monsters.
Yes.
It's huge. And it's funny that we were still using larger things for, large computers, but it's just kind of even funny for that period. I think we started to get smaller computers, but we still, for how long did Marvel and DC Comics always have these massive, giant screens?
Well, it's almost like this is sort of
I love it, though.
This is like, I don't know where this evolved from, maybe like James Bond movies, but it's like every high-tech headquarters has computers and walls that look like this, large
blinking lights
and fans and tubes, and it's just great.
I love it, but it's
a little desk chair.
Yeah,
right?
there's a little chair, and then there's a little control panel usually.
Yeah,
and then they have to look up 50 feet in the air to see it. Love it. I absolutely love it.
It's great. So then they find out that yes, the Falcon is being held captive, but it turns out that yes, they apparently didn't kill Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner's not dead.
I didn't know that till now.
Yeah. so they've got him strapped to this table, and they're going to basically. Is it going to be a hostage swap or no? What it is they want Jim Wilson's or they want Jim Wilson, the nephew,
right?
And so this is where things kind of get wonky.
I'm a little confused here.
Sure.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Is that supposed to be the Kingpin?
No, it's not.
And I know it's not, but I didn't know if he had other aliases. There was a little part,
Sure.
And because I was trying, I'm like, I don't remember him doing something and having another, but it looks a lot like him.
Yeah, you could say that.
I thought it
kind of an overweight bald guy, yeah. So then things get funky here, and once again, Quasar kind of, I guess at this point he's being played as like an impetuous young, hothead. So I'm fighting back now. So he starts shooting people. We get another fight scene.
I love the panel though. The guy, there's just the perspectives, the goons, the henchmen.
13.
I love all the henchmen.
The goon hanging off the.
And I love the old style. They made sure they all had nice uniforms. Mm-hmm. I mean, someone paid for those.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they all match perfectly.
Yeah, not like the movies where they all kind of just have these generic grayish.
Yeah, they had nice colors.
Yeah.
So look, nice guns and
sense of fashion. Yeah. So then Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk, joins the fray, and then of course knocks out. Oh yeah, this is reference to a previous time that the Hulk saw Quasar in Defenders, and then we actually get a really good scene of the Hulk bear hugging Captain America and squeezing him so hard that does he die? We don't know, right? He might be dead. I don't know what happens, but that's it. So then it wraps up, and unfortunately, we are not going to find out what happens next because Quasar is not in the next issue of Captain America. But this story is continued in Incredible Hulk 232, which you will not be reviewing, unfortunately, Kevin, but I will be reviewing on the next episode of QUASAR QUA-NOLOGY. So I will find out what's going to happen next. Now, tell me, are you excited enough about this cliffhanger to find out what happens to these characters?
I am.
Yeah? Okay, that's good to know.
But what happened if I didn't collect the Hulk? Maybe I didn't read it. Now I have to go but see the brilliance of that. Here, try a different comic.
Yep.
To finish your story. And I used to do that back in the day. I would because the crossover. We always too many crossovers.
Sure.
But back then, they had them here and there, but they're a piece. But then I buy that one issue, and I guarantee you, and I have to pick it up. I have it somewhere in my dusty
collection,
basement.
yep.
That I bet you that issue starts off and probably brings you back in, and you could read that issue without having to read these previous 3 issues.
Absolutely. And that's the way it always was at this point, right? And that's the thing is usually today when comics cross over, I do get really annoyed when I'm forced to buy something that I don't want to read. But here's the difference. Even adjusted for inflation, don't tell me that $4.99, which is how much a new comic costs, is equal to 35 cents.
It took me longer to read these.
Yep.
I was engrossed the whole time. Mm-hmm. Not grossed, engrossed.
Engrossed.
I found I could understand the stories, and we talked about, I can recall to you basically what happened in them. I can still remember I remember every little small detail? No. But most of it, I could tell you visually in my head, because this is a visual medium.
Yep.
And you're supposed to, and I think we sometimes get the artists and everything into all this high tech, all this coloring and super detail, but our minds only process so much and can recall so much. So there was a reason that these books were done in a way. And if you look at the coloring back then, what they want emphasized is emphasized from the foreground to the background. Even like the computers are grayed out or whatever.
True.
All those pieces that help, because I still recall what all the panels were basically about. So that to me is really,
And it's funny that you should mention that one detail, because as you were talking, I'm flipping through, kind of just looking at the color. And if you notice on page Digital 6, okay, they obviously had a limited color palette. They only had 4 colors to pick from. But look at this here. The background changes color in every panel. It goes from pink to blue to yellow to white to yellow. Now, you might ask, well, why do they do that? Well, there's a pretty obvious answer. It's for the contrast, right?
Exactly.
So look at these bottom 4 panels, the sky is a different color. Now, that's obviously not realistic. It's technically not good continuity, but as a design, it works, right? And then you can take that yellow and you can match it to the yellow of the truck,
and
right?
You notice the colors they're using. You got yellow, blue, red.
Yep.
And each color distinguishes what you have. A truck, the car. You could use all the newer colors and everything, and then tones, but then I would say you wouldn't know what the road was. It basically differentiates the horizon for you, which is basic art and everything when you're trying to show those things, I think. I remember, you had your horizon and your foregrounds, your backgrounds. I don't remember all the terminology.
Sure.
So I apologize to all the artists out there. But not saying today is, it's just, we have a lot of great tools and everything, but I'm wondering what's happened is, are our comic books moving so much to a movie look? Yeah. Versus what that's not the medium was intended for. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Or it's you're trying to do art. I get it, but are you getting so much detail that it's hard to recall for the individual?
Well, also this is the thing too is, I don't know about you, but when I see those Marvel Masterworks. Okay, so the Marvel Masterworks are collections of mostly 60s and 70s Marvel comics.
Pretty much, yeah.
But when they come out, what do they do now with the newer editions? They always have a painted version of the original cover. So it might be a Jack Kirby Iron Man cover, but it's painted over by someone else or recreated by someone else.
Yeah, I think they do those with the omnibuses, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's...
Because the Masterworks usually just shows a cover of one of them.
I'm talking about, like... not.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Like Spider-Man Masterworks, right. Not Marvel Masterworks. It's a slightly different version.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But you know what? I don't like that. If I'm going to buy a comic book that's drawn by Jack Kirby or Stan Lee, I want the original art to be in the cover because I'm looking for... This is how I see it. If I'm looking for Jack Kirby art, then I look for it by the cover. If someone out there doesn't like Jack Kirby... Well, then don't put an Alex Ross cover on it because they're not going to like the interior. Put a Jack Kirby cover on it.
It's like the old Gold Key comics. You used to love they had those painted covers, and then you'd open them up, and
it
was the worst art ever.
And you know what? And everyone knew that was the style. It was a
thing. But that's what you feel like is like, well,
I know. It's like, would you? How about this? Would you take an Alex Ross comic and put a Kirby cover on the front? No, of course not, right? And they shouldn't do the reverse either. So, I'm just saying that I think this ties into what you're saying is sometimes they'll take these old comics and they'll recolor them, but it's like you were saying, it's like it doesn't fit. Like this art was drawn a certain way and colored a certain way that all meshed together. So to take this style of art and then add all these computer colors, it wouldn't really...
Sometimes it's okay. I mean, they have restored them and we do see them and they're I guess you say richer because we have the palette, so they do alter them. I think some of the best ones that I would say best, but they did a really interesting job was with the EC archives. A lot of it were Marie Severin, phenomenal artist. And colorist as well. She did a lot of the coloring. So the problem was back then they didn't have that, again, the palette. So they did redo them with a better color scheme. But I have to say they look good.
Okay, well, and it's definitely possible.
But some aren't, and it's they didn't have it. So you can question if they had that scheme. But you're right. I think it's... When it gets into the high gloss pages, it sometimes loses its magic. Yeah. Where you pick up the copy with the newsprint, I think it's maybe the way to bleed. I don't know, because it's cheap pulp paper or something.
Well, you know what?
I don't know. I'm not technical.
No. I think that I can't stand the new paper, and I think that the shiny paper and the computer coloring. Like, let's be clear. Already, we look at the '90s computer coloring with disdain. No one looks back at that with affection. 90s computer coloring was garbage, right? Like the Marvel, like some of the early stuff was good, like when Image was doing it was really bright and vibrant. But then as time went on and it got like...
Well, what's on the computer and then what's printed is always a challenge.
Sure.
I think I have to commend many artists and graphic designers over the years, and the technology is advanced where it's pretty... What you still do, I think, get where it's not coming out. I've heard of artists say that they weren't happy with when the colors came out of a comic and it was grayed out or muddied more than it should have been.
Yeah, I've heard... artists say that apparently a lot of times colors start with a gray wash or whatever it's called.
Right.
That is, to me, ridiculous. You know.
I like the when they're actually the bright white. But you're right. I'm wondering. You're right. In the '90s, you're right. The coloring it got to be, and everything was on the dark pages, and we moved to everything. And I don't know if that. And it's interesting because you don't have the panels like you do. I find that everything bleeds in more, which makes it kind of hard to fall, but maybe because I'm just older and I grew up in a different time, so maybe and that's just me. But
here's the thing: is you could argue. People say, "Well, things evolve, right?" But it's like movies, okay? I personally don't like CGI. A lot of people do like CGI, but no matter how much you like CGI, how much do you like the CGI from the '90s, from the 2000s? I mean, the thing about CGI is It's like it's a technology that I think that they used too much. They used it before they knew how to use it, and I think that goes for computer coloring. There's definitely a way to do it right, and we've seen it done right. But I think they went overboard as soon as they got all the tools in the '90s. They just went crazy with it, and I think that the way that these characters were designed, the way they were created, this is how they should be drawn. And you could apply it to, say, Garfield. The way that Garfield was done in the '70s and the '80s is the way Garfield should always be done. That's like. And I know it fits into that.
You make a good point. I noticed that with a lot of the shows today. I mean, obviously that's the thing. But they've done it with certain other characters. I think of many of my daughter's cartoons, and it's like, oh, why'd you do that?
Yep.
And it's just something wrong. And you're right. In the '90s, I remember when they were doing that 3D. It was horrible looking. I mean, they weren't there yet with it. Obviously, it's come a long way. I think the thing with this, just to say, we're talking about the storytelling or whatever it is. Things have evolved, but I don't know necessarily if strong writing has. And I'm not talking about sophistication of the story. I'm talking about actually written properly.
Right.
From grammar to linkage, all these comics for the most part. And I think part of it is, I don't know what they are today, but the editors back then were very tough editors. Yep. I would say, imagine. We heard stories. And you would know Jim Shooter was, making sure, and all the others. But even if there's some of the wording is kind of campy, if you want to say, it's not that bad, or the story is like, what? I can follow that story, no problem. It has got a thread. Anything you write should connect.
Yeah.
So all these little plot lines, it follows a simple. I don't feel that all the time with things I'm reading now.
No, not at all.
Depending, especially the superhero stuff. I'm finding that era now is becoming a challenge. Now, I read other books, other type properties that aren't maybe from the two big superhero groups. Some good storytelling in them and good things. It's interesting that the era that kind of kept comics alive for so long, that genre, which we all love, superheroes, is the one I do not enjoy today.
Yeah.
As I only enjoy it from the older stuff, and I mean that's me.
Well, and the thing is there are some good superhero comics, but
there is.
The impression that I get is that in some cases you have writers that obviously are very talented, but how hard are they trying? How much effort are they putting in? How much time are they spending to write the comic? Whereas, I like Chris Claremont, you like Chris Claremont. Some people don't like Chris Claremont, but here's the thing you can't argue. He was passionate about the stuff he wrote. He treated the characters like real people. He put a lot of thought into how each character would act in each situation. Just like we saw in this comic where Captain America, sees a kid about to run into the street, and then he needs to get money for a bus, and so Beast helps him. It's like that Beast scene took up a page, but it's like at least we saw, well, how would the different Avengers react? How would my friends react, right? And so each character acts a different way, and that's what makes it interesting, right? It's not just generic plots. It's like each one is it's like a real person.
Yeah, and that's the years of building up, and you wonder why people are passionate when they've changed the superhero, whether they're ethnicity or what, whether it's female, male. And it's hard for a lot of traditional, but part of the reason I think too is I think they did try to keep them individual, like strong characters. They built a history around them, but that doesn't mean you can't change, a look or anything. That's just, that can change. But what I'm trying to get at is what you're saying is they each have a unique personality to them, and I don't see that as much anymore. And I'm not going to mention writers, but there are ones where everyone's funny in the book.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
I know. I don't think I know what writer you mean.
Well, I'm not going to get into that. And that's okay. But then you're going back where you're not even doing insight or looking into how those characters are. Mm-hmm. And so then the question is, are they just a commodity with a name?
Yeah.
Would you do that to Mickey Mouse? Would you put Mickey Mouse with a gun or do something?
Actually, even if you want to talk about Mickey Mouse, would you make Mickey Mouse talk like Donald Duck? No, you wouldn't. Donald Duck has to be completely different from Mickey Mouse, who has to be completely different from Goofy. Right. And the same thing applies to the Avengers.
And that's where I'm saying where people might get muddied a bit too, of personality versus a look.
Yes.
So if Captain America was black but had the traits of Captain America that I grew up with, I don't personally care. Do you know what I mean? Because it's still to me Captain America because it's the essence or what. So if he was African American or white, does it matter, that part? So I'm wondering, some people, they have to have them a certain way, but actually,
here's what I think is that I would rather Marvel say that Peter Parker is half black and half Latino than read a comic about Miles Morales. And the reason is because Peter Parker was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
And he developed over, what is it now, 50, 60, almost 60 years? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Miles Morales might be a great character, but
he's not Spider-Man to me.
He's not Peter Parker.
Not Peter Parker.
Azrael's not Bruce Wayne.
And that's what I was getting at. It doesn't. But I think sometimes, and I'm not. I can't speak for those that get that. Maybe they have some other issues that they need to get over. In terms of things, not going to get into that. But what I'm saying too is that I think I'm very ingrained in my characters, but I step back and go, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like you said, Steve Rogers is African American, say, or now in the books, but it's still Steve Rogers,
right?
But it doesn't matter to me that he's that. He's not what he was before in that sense. So that's where, I think but it's hard to look at that now because that characterization, that uniqueness, just I'm not seeing it as I used to.
No, I know, and it's funny because
kind of went on track here. Where I was trying to
it's like when you read any because at this point in Marvel's history, Stan Lee was still around and Jim Shooter, he was running things, and he was very strict. You had people like Mark Grenwald keeping track of continuity. All the editors were really strict about continuity, and it felt like from 61 to maybe 91, you had a straight line of continuity where all the characters acted consistently. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but everything fit together.
And they built on the character.
On continuity.
They never took it away.
And then after a certain point, I mean, nowadays you might see someone like Mark Waid or Grant Morrison tie back to continuity. But for the most part, starting around 2000, you started to have superstar writers like people from TV shows and people from other mediums, which is fine. But they would kind of come in and they'd be like, oh, we got this guy from this TV show. Let's just let him do what he wants. And so then he would write his version of Spider-Man, his version of whatever, Iron Man, but they wouldn't be the real character. They didn't fit in anywhere with the other continuity. And I know that some people don't think that's important, but I think you and I are arguing it is. Because you want to feel like you're reading the same character.
That's the reason what sold the character. That's the reason the success. If you hadn't created Spider-Man as you did at the time, and I'm saying in terms of the powers or the struggles or his personality, would you just bought it because he looked cool?
It could just because of his costume. That's ridiculous.
Maybe for the first issue. I mean, then that was always the issue about how Marvel, Stan Lee moved from two-dimensional characters, that maybe DC was still so-called struggling with. But to make it in a sense that this character's interesting. Because he basically took the romance and the soap operas that are in the day and basically put a superhero theme to it in a sense where they had, real life problems or down to earth issues. But that's what made it fascinating and interesting. And then it connected everything. And then yes, your character can evolve a bit, but you should build on, not replace.
I think,
And just to go into your saying, like, it's fine if someone wants to take a what if or another take on it. But to me as a writer coming in that, I know you want some flexibility. Obviously, you want to have creativity. But can you take that creativity and see how creative can you be to take the character and say, this is how you'd act in a situation. So how would I handle this type of situation on him? Based on this,
And that's what I think that's the biggest disconnect I have. And it's almost like we should do a whole other segment on this. The biggest disconnect I have between people, like-minded people like me, we agree on most things, but there's like this disconnect where they seem obsessed with characters, quote, evolving and, quote, changing. And that's why you see people say, I want Peter Parker to age and I want him to get married and I am 100% the opposite.
Then watch a reality show.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing
is fantasy.
Is their reaction to me saying that is that somehow I'm a fanboy and because I want things to stay the same. And it's like, no, back up. Let's just compare Spider-Man to other comic book and cartoon characters like we previously mentioned Garfield, Charlie Brown, The Simpsons. When you are drawing a cartoon character, you have the advantage of not worrying about the actor getting old, like Doctor Who, that they have to write around because they're constantly changing actors. With Charlie Brown, he was the exact same for 50 years because he worked. He was created as a, 7-year-old or 8-year-old boy, and he never needed to change because, let's be clear, Peter Parker does not exist to reflect your personal life. Peter Parker exists as a mechanism to tell stories about his milieu or whatever. And so for Peter Parker, he represents the teenager. He represents, the struggle between family and duty, right? He represents alienation because he's a nerd, right? With Clark Kent or Superman, it might be he represents the immigrant experience. He represents being an alien. With Green Lantern, he's a cop. He's a space cop, right? And so each one of these characters has a unique way of being used for a story. So what is the point of taking that and just blowing it up and saying, you know what? No, I don't care. It's worked for 50 years, but I'm just going to throw it out. I'm going to start fresh. That doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone be arrogant enough to do that?
I don't know, because down the road, if they're so muddied in it, just a namesake and a look, people are going to disassociate with it. I don't know how long after things fall apart, and you look at certain characters that aren't popular anymore. Was it maybe because there wasn't much built with them? Like I don't know. I'm thinking of like what happened to Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or
that's a good question.
And those characters, is there something there that just didn't gel? And there's superheroes that have had that come and go and things. And then there's superheroes that were created at a time when they weren't, people weren't ready for them as much as they are now today, which is great to see now. Like characters like Black Panther and Wonder Woman. I mean, Wonder Woman's always been popular, excuse me, but I mean, you're now seeing more, of female heroes, out there, which you didn't have back in the day, because maybe, the primary reader at the time was mainly males.
Right.
But anyway, so what I'm getting at, it's just, I don't know. But it's also, did someone pick up those characters too? And I think of someone like Alan Moore and some of these writers that maybe were two-dimensional and put more depth and interest into them so you can start associate. And now they're interesting.
That's definitely true for some of them.
Yeah.
Like
some
Alan,
aren't.
Yeah, like Grant Morrison with Animal Man.
Yes.
Alan Moore with Swamp Thing with Miracle Man. That's definitely true for some characters. I think the other thing too is that the ones we just mentioned, Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, we previously mentioned Mark Waid, every change they made built on the past.
Yeah.
Because even Swamp Thing, even though Alan Moore altered Swamp Thing's origin, he still incorporated everything that happened before, right? Animal Man completely rebooted the continuity from the 60s, but he made it work. He incorporated it into the new version. And this idea of just taking everything and throwing it out, I mean, it was done once, it was done right, and that was in the 50s with DC, with the Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman, and Atom. And that's the...
Yeah, they rebooted, they modernized them. I think they kept concepts of it. And you're right, and I guess that's a different issue where they took a name and put it in. But I mean... I'm
just saying that it worked then. I don't want them to do it anymore. I want them. I want them to leave it the way it is. Like theoretically, you could go back and say that Alan Scott discovered the Green Lantern Corps, and maybe he got a new costume, and they could do the exact same stories, but it's still Alan Scott. I'm just saying that what's done is done. Now it's Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, okay? But now going forward, there are people that think, well, we should do it every 10 years. We should get Kyle Rayner, and then when Kyle Rayner retires, we should get another guy, and we should replace Oliver Queen with Connor Hawkins. Like, no, just leave it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I know that they did it once in the 50s, but we don't need to do it every 10 years.
Well, they did it, but also, too, that they did something with it where they made them... Because you know what happens with costume changes. They've done that where they've just taken costume changes and switch it. But you're right. The Flash of the 60s is nothing like the Flash of the 40s.
No.
And I think... But they built on it and gave him a good, unique history and concept. Yeah, there's obviously concepts and things that were from the original. And it worked at that time because... Part of it, superheroes were kind of falling off the way for at least 4 or 5 years. Everyone seems longer, but really, by the mid-50s, they brought them back, started bringing them back. But, yeah, it's interesting. There's those rare exceptions that works. But look at things when they did Spider-Man in the black suit for a while. And look at this. And people, maybe people love that. But people eventually want to go back to...
And that's fine.
Identify,
And that's the thing
is that... for a storyline.
Definitely, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, like, in the 80s, they did it with every single Marvel superhero.
Yeah,
Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, Cap, they all got different costumes or they changed identities or something.
Remember Thor?
But they always brought it back to the original because it was a way of just temporarily giving you something different and showing you the contrast. Like, for example, Captain America. The contrast between Steve Rogers and Johnny Walker. That was the point of the story.
Yeah.
It was, or even with Bruce Wayne and Azrael. The point of the story was to show, I know that you guys want violence and you want vigilantes, but Bruce Wayne is Bruce Wayne. Azrael's not Bruce Wayne, you know? That was the point of that story. And I don't mind that at all. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, I know because we've met these people that are like, well, I like the new Hulk better than Bruce Banner. I like this other character as Iron Man better than Tony Stark. It's like, yeah, but Tony Stark, just think about the thought that was put into creating Tony Stark by Stan Lee and Don Heck and Jack Kirby and all the other people that contributed, as well as Bob Layton and David Michelinie and all this. Like, this is a character that took 50, 60 years to evolve. Bruce Wayne, 70 years. Clark Kent, 70 years.
They feel like real people to a lot of,
And that's the thing. You think you can just replace that? It's like, well, you know what? We're going to do something new. You're really just going to toss that out. And here's the thing is, this is my final thing I want to ask you. Now, before anyone jumps on us, I'm certainly not, I'm absolutely not saying that I have any problem with, there's a lot of the new Marvel characters, like say Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. I love that character. That's the only Marvel series I buy now, okay? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about replacing, as we said, Bruce Banner. Like, because there was a new Hulk for a while. Remember? There was that Asian young guy that replaced Bruce Banner. Yeah. Whatever. I don't even know. I didn't read it. I'm just pointing out, I don't care how good it is. It's not Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's an example of a temporary story and they went back. Okay, fine. I'm just pointing out that I see what could be happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Some of the problems that Marvel's had in the last 10 years might now be happening with the movies. We get to the end of Avengers Endgame, which you did see, right?
I have not seen it all.
Oh my God.
I got an idea of what's happening.
I have to give one spoiler. This doesn't spoil the movie, but I have to say one thing. At the end of the movie, Steve Rogers hands his shield over to Sam Wilson.
Yeah, I figured as much. Okay. I figured as much. So, there was something big there.
So I said to someone, I said, that's too bad because instead of Steve Rogers passing the shield on to Sam Wilson, why don't they just recast Steve Rogers? And the person said, well, because we've had Steve Rogers. He's done. His stories are done. And I said, really? How many Captain America movies? We have 3. How many issues of Captain America are there? 900? How many Captain America stories have we not seen? We haven't seen the Serpent Crown. We haven't seen the Johnny Walker. We haven't seen, right? There's all these untold stories.
Because I think what's happened too is there's a dissociation with the characters. It's the characters are just a piece of a story now to entertain you. And especially the movies and everything, they're not what the whole thing's centered around. Mm-hmm. Even though they're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't care. I don't know this for a character really. Is there something now, I'm not saying that the movies like the Cabin, I thought they did, pretty good job and everything. But why is it that? And why do you have to, why can't you make Falcon his own character? Like really build him up? Because I think he could be interesting.
Make a Falcon movie, exactly.
Right. So, but now you've moved where it's like, okay, you've got to be.
I know, and I'm not saying it's inherently bad. I
don't mind if Falcon wants to be Cap.
No, I'm just saying that, in that case, even Kevin Feige says, he's like, he has said in the past that I follow the James Bond model, which is that everything, we figure out a way to incorporate all the old movies instead of just rebooting, which is what DC does. In their comics and in their movies, they just reboot. And I love DC, but that's their biggest weakness, I think. Now, don't get me wrong. On one hand, I do appreciate that DC can publish regular Batman, Black Label Batman, animated Batman. That's a strength that DC has. Because different age groups and different, cool.
They've done that in the past with stuff too. Vertigo, I don't mind that. And all that.
But what I'm saying is that as time goes by, when the reboot, the New 52 happened, I know that both of us were really against it, and then we both gave it a try. At one point, I was buying 15 DC comics a month. Then it was 10. Then it was 5. And then it was like 1.
Yeah, no. And from the New 52 to the new 1.
But looking back, it's like every time if I'm reading like a Wikipedia entry on, let's just say, Poison Ivy, and I want to read the Poison Ivy history, as soon as I get to that New 52 in 2011, I just stop reading because I'm like, what in the hell were you guys thinking? Because at least in 1956, when Julius Schwartz rebooted Flash and Green Lantern and Atom and Hawkman, those characters had been canceled.
Right. That's
DC
right.
took characters that were successful, that were selling, and they threw out all the continuity. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and just to try to ignore it, and I guess
just ignore it.
It's just not there. Well, no, we know it's there. You want to start things. That's fine, but that unfortunately just gets. I shake my head sometimes with that because it's like, well, I'm not going to forget it. I read it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say is you talk about the characters like with James Bond. I think one of the best. I would personally say, maybe people don't agree with me, and you look at a character like Doctor Who.
Yeah,
the character has changed because actors come and go.
Change, and
but the concept of Doctor Who and all the cleverness and is still Doctor Who. And the greatest example is we have the first time a female Doctor Who.
Right.
Now, you and I have talked before. Yeah, the stories haven't been great.
Right.
But nothing. She's done a phenomenal job, I feel,
actress,
as Doctor Who. And I don't see a female Doctor Who. I just see Doctor Who.
Right, because it's the same character.
Exactly.
Right.
And I don't mind if you want to change again from male, female, or whatever. But you, like you just mentioned, you still have what is entertained people for so much. What makes people feel this is a connection to that character,
right?
Even though they might visually look, be different or whatever, because of whatever reason you want to try. And I think it was a neat idea. I think it was a bold idea,
right?
Because a lot of people are like, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
I'm sure, but I don't know. It seems the ratings were pretty good. I don't know.
Well, actually, that's not true. But
okay. Well, I mean, the first viewership,
they
people tuned in.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I don't blame her for that.
No. You know what?
And the stories.
The only thing that's unfortunate about it is that the writing hasn't been great and the ratings have been low. And what's going to happen is all the haters are going to use that to justify. You see, we were right. They should have never have had a female Doctor Who. But no, it's that the writing is not good. That's the problem. But casting her with a female actress was fine because, like you said, Jodie Whittaker is still playing the same Doctor as all the other actors.
And they all bring their own little things to it. But that's evolvement. But yes, totally she is.
Yep.
And I don't, like I said, I see Doctor Who.
Exactly.
And that's because you've convinced me, the actor has, that they are taking that and respecting that and delivering, and that's a good storytelling what those characters are. But to flip it out, and then I have someone, I go, well, that's not Captain America to me. It's not the color of his skin that I would say is he's not Captain America. It's how he acts and what he does that I would say, I don't want to read this anymore because it's not, and I'm not talking about evolving again. I'm talking about that totally, they're just 180 of how they would handle their typical situation.
And you know what it comes down to? Like we said in these stories, with the kid, almost getting hit by the car.
Yeah.
The way I see, or with any situation.
I love that part.
It's great. You should be able to take a superhero and put them all in a situation, and you should be able to predict how they'd react. How would Batman act? How would Superman act? And it should be consistent and predictable. And to just change that for the sake of one story, to be shocking, to be cool, that's not good writing. I'm sorry. And even some of my favorite writers like Mark Millar, well, he's in the middle for me. Mark Millar he's a good writer, but he's completely altered characterization just for the sake of short-term shock value. And that is one of the worst things about modern writers. Some of them are really talented, but they don't have respect enough for the characters. Okay, so basically we're right, everyone else is wrong. But please, I know that we've kind of veered off here. We've reviewed 3 comic books. We've also had a long diatribe about continuity, about characters, reboots. Please let us know what you thought about these 3 comics, also what you thought of our review, and let us know what you thought about our discussion about changing superheroes, continuity, modern writing versus old writing. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe is it just nostalgia? Is it just because these are the comics we grew up with? Maybe we're completely wrong. But please, at least give us evidence. Give us examples of why we're wrong, why you're right. Or not. It's not about right and wrong. It's about what's good and bad, and we want comics to be good. We want superheroes to be good, right?
We like to have active dialogue, and please be respectful. Right. We're not here that we weren't trying to hate either. We were just our perspective. And if you have a different one, that's great. I like to hear it too, because sometimes it does change my opinion, or I take it from a different view. That even though we've been talking about it from this way, and we joke about being snobbish about our likes and everything, but I'm willing to step back and say, good point.
Yep.
Never thought of it that way.
Exactly. I also want to give a shout out to the website that we've been getting our chronology from. This is the complete Marvel reading order. Okay, CMRO. This is a weird URL here. CMRO.travis-starnes.com. The complete Marvel reading
That's the name of the guy that does
complete
it?
Marvel reading order. So this is where we've been getting our
It's pretty impressive.
chronological appearances of Quasar. Are you familiar with this website?
I think I saw it a while back,
Okay.
but I haven't seen it in a while. But just when you were going through it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, basically, so you get two different levels, at least on this character. You get the full order and you get the expanded order. So in this comic, in this series, if you want to read Captain America, you can, if you want to follow along the chronology of every Marvel comic. Look at this. For example, in this, we're looking at Captain America number 217. In the context of the full order, we see Machine Man, Power Man and Iron Fist, Captain American Falcon, Captain American Falcon, Captain American Falcon. But then at the bottom, it says expanded order, okay? And it's the same, except it has, usually in this expanded order, they'll have Marvel comics that are not necessarily tied in with main continuity, like Westerns, romance comics. But in this comic, for some reason, they've stuck a Donald Duck comic in. And I don't know why. Maybe if we search through this page.
Is there a reference about Donald Duck?
There must be, yeah. I don't know why Donald Duck is here, but now that people are listening, I want to find out. Oh, it's not even listed. I don't know why.
Can you click on it?
We can, yeah. You know what? Look at this. That's why Kevin's here. Hold on a sec here. So why is Donald Duck included? Right? Yeah, yeah. Issue blurb: Cap battles an alien invader with a sweet tooth. What? Donald Duck. Character appearances: Captain America. Oh, so he's in this issue.
What?
It must be like a joke panel or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, but anyway, unfortunately, we don't have access to the actual issue, but it is interesting. So anyway,
please send us the Donald Duck issue.
Yeah. So the great, yes, if you can. So the great thing is though, is that for me, I wanted to find out every chronological appearance of Quasar, and so this is where I got it from.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And now I want to know about that Donald Duck.
Exactly. See, and that's what this is all about. It's about
learning.
It's about learning, right? And so anyway, so thank you so much for joining us, Kev-N. Kev-N has been on many of our Comic Book Syndicate comic book video reviews and movie reviews, so please check those out. I'm sure that we'll have you on again in the future. We are definitely covering, your favorite era, 70s and 80s. I mean, hey, I love 60s too. I love 40s, 50s, but my favorite era is 70s and 80s.
And we said it's our era we grew up
in,
so yes.
So next week, please join us again when we will be reviewing The Hulk number 232, 233, and 234 with our pal Josh. So yeah, we'll see you next week for Quasar Qua-Nology number 4.